Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper. Uncover the hidden secrets of history, from ancient mysteries to lost civilizations. Join us on this thrilling journey. Subscribe and dive into the unknown. Sometimes, the greatest treasures aren't found in a king's tomb or a sunken galleon. They are found by accident, buried in the earth, waiting silently for centuries. In 1999, two treasure hunters in Germany unearthed a bronze disc, inlaid with gold. They thought they had found a piece of ancient jewelry. What they had actually found would rewrite the history of astronomy. This is the Nebra Sky Disk, an object of breathtaking beauty and profound mystery. Is it the world's oldest realistic depiction of the cosmos? Is it a complex astronomical calculator from the Bronze Age? Or is it something else entirely? Let's begin the investigation. In any great investigation, before we can begin to speculate about motives or debate complex theories, we must first establish the undisputed facts of the case. We must understand the evidence itself in all its physical detail. What is it? Where was it found? How did it come into our possession? And what is it made of? With the Nebra Sky Disk, this process is like profiling a silent witness, an object that has been waiting for thousands of years to tell its story. Every scratch, every piece of gold, every grain of dirt attached to it is a clue. So let's open the evidence locker and begin our examination of the artifact at the heart of this incredible mystery. Our first piece of evidence is, of course, the object itself. At first glance, the Nebra Sky Disk is an object of immediate and breathtaking beauty. It is a roughly circular plate of bronze, about 30 centimeters or 12 inches across, roughly the size of a large dinner plate or a vinyl record. It is surprisingly thin and weighs about 2.2 kilograms, or just under 5 pounds. What first captures your eye is its extraordinary color. Over the centuries, the bronze has developed a rich, deep blue-green patina, like the color of a twilight sky or a deep ocean. This beautiful corrosion is not a flaw. It is the signature of time itself, a chemical reaction between the metal and the soil that has protected the disk for millennia. But the true magic of the disk lies on its surface. Inlaid into the bronze are symbols made of pure gold foil, which still gleam as brightly today as they did the day they were crafted. The first and most prominent symbols are what appear to be celestial bodies. There is a large, full circle, which is almost universally interpreted as either the sun or a full moon. Next to it is a distinct crescent moon, its shape familiar to any human who has ever looked up at the night sky. And scattered near these two larger objects is a dense cluster of 32 small, circular gold dots, representing stars. Within this cluster, a specific group of 7 dots is arranged in a tight, recognizable pattern that immediately draws the eye. But this is not the disk as it was originally made. Scientific analysis has shown that the disk was not created all at once, but was modified over time, in at least 3 or 4 distinct phases. After its initial creation with the sun, moon, and stars, 2 more arcs of gold were added, one on the right edge and one on the left. These arcs are not randomly placed. They are perfectly curved and seem to frame the celestial scene in the center. Later still, another arc was added to the bottom of the disk. This final arc is different from the others. It's not just a smooth band of gold. It has fine parallel lines etched into its surface, almost like the planks of a boat. Finally, the entire circumference of the disk was perforated with a series of small, evenly spaced holes, suggesting that it might have been once sewn onto a piece of cloth or leather, or perhaps mounted onto a wooden staff. This is not a simple object. It is a composite artifact, a canvas that was added to and altered over what could have been decades or even generations. Each addition is a clue, a new layer to the story it has to tell. And it was found not alone but as part of a group. The disc was discovered alongside 2 magnificent bronze swords of exquisite craftsmanship, 2 heavy bronze hatchets, a single bronze chisel, and a pair of spiral arm rings. This is critically important. The disc was not a lost item, accidentally dropped in a field. It was part of a hoard, a collection of the most valuable and powerful objects of its time, all deliberately buried together in a single ritual act. It was an offering, a time capsule, or the hidden treasure of a powerful chieftain or priest. We are not just investigating a single artifact. We are investigating the scene of a sacred, prehistoric burial. This brings us to our second piece of evidence: the location. Where was this incredible treasure buried? The answer is just as significant as the object itself. The hoard was unearthed on the summit of a prominent hill in Germany known as the Mittelberg, which rises about 250 meters above the surrounding landscape near the small town of Nibra. This was not just a random hill. Archaeological surveys have revealed that the Mittelberg summit was a site of great importance in prehistoric times. It is surrounded by an ancient earthen wall, forming a large, circular enclosure. This was not a fortress or a settlement. It was a ritual site, a sacred place set apart from the everyday world. The astronomical significance of the location is stunning. If you stand at the very spot where the disc was found and look out across the landscape, your view is not random. The enclosure on the hill seems to have been designed as a massive open-air observatory. From the discovery point, you can watch the sun set over the distant Harz Mountains. On the day of the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun appears to set directly behind the most prominent peak in that mountain range, a mountain called the Brocken, which itself was a place of immense myth and legend in German folklore. On the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the sun sets behind a different, corresponding point on the horizon. The Mittelberg Hill was a place specifically chosen and designed to track the annual journey of the sun. The fact that an object covered in celestial symbols was deliberately buried at the heart of a prehistoric solar observatory is a powerful clue that its purpose was deeply connected to the sky. But while the object and its location seem to point to a clear, sacred purpose, our third piece of evidence throws a shadow of doubt and controversy over the entire story. We must examine the discovery itself, the chain of custody. And this is where the investigation gets messy. The Nibra sky disk was not discovered by a team of careful archaeologists, meticulously documenting every detail of the excavation. It was discovered illegally in the summer of 1999 by 2 men, Henry Westphal and Mario Renner. They were not scientists. They were treasure hunters, or more accurately, looters, sweeping the protected historical site with an unlicensed metal detector. Their discovery was a moment of pure chance, but their actions afterward created a nightmare for historians and scientists. In their haste to dig the objects out of the ground, they acted with brute force. They struck the disc with their shovel, chipping a piece from its edge and knocking one of the golden stars loose. They had no interest in its historical context. They saw only the glint of gold and the promise of money. For the next 2.5 years, the Nibra hoard vanished into the murky underworld of the illegal antiquities market. Westphal and Renner sold the entire collection to a dealer in Cologne for about 30,000 German marks. From there, it was passed between a series of shadowy collectors and middlemen, each one hoping to sell it for a fortune. The scientific community knew nothing of its existence until it was finally offered for sale for a staggering 700,000 marks. The authorities were alerted, and in February of 2002, the chief archaeologist for the state of Saxony-Anhalt, a man named Harold Meller, orchestrated a daring police sting operation. Posing as a potential buyer, Meller arranged a meeting with the dealers in the basement of a hotel in Basel, Switzerland. When the dealers brought out the disc, the Swiss police swooped in and seized the priceless artifact. The looters and dealers were eventually arrested, and the hoard was finally brought into a scientific laboratory. But the damage had been done. Because the disk was ripped from the ground without any proper archaeological record, we have lost invaluable information forever. We have to rely on the testimony of the looters to know its exact original position and how the objects were arranged. This tainted chain of custody has opened the door for critics to question every aspect of the official story. This leads us to our final and most concrete piece of evidence: the materials themselves. In the lab, scientists could finally answer the fundamental question: what is this thing made of? Using sophisticated techniques like X-ray fluorescence and mass spectrometry, they were able to create a unique chemical fingerprint for the metals used in the disk. The results were astonishing and provided a new layer to the mystery. The analysis revealed that the bronze of the disk was made from copper that was mined in a very specific region, the Austrian Alps. This was hundreds of kilometers away from the Mittelberg Hill in Germany. But the origin of the gold was even more surprising. The chemical signature of the gold used for the stars and the moon did not match any known source in Central Europe. It was a perfect match for gold found in only one place: the Carnon River in Cornwall on the southwestern tip of England. The Nebra sky disk was not a local product. It was a truly international object, a testament to the incredible reach of Bronze Age trade networks. Over 3,600 years ago, copper was being mined in Austria, gold was being panned from a river in England, and these precious materials were being transported hundreds, if not thousands, of miles to a workshop in central Germany, where a master craftsman fused them together to create this celestial masterpiece. This tells us that the people who made and used this disk were not an isolated, primitive tribe. They were part of a sophisticated, interconnected European community, a world bound together by trade, technology, and a shared fascination with the heavens. So, as we close the evidence locker on this initial phase of our investigation, a clear but complex portrait emerges. We have a beautiful, multi-layered artifact, covered in celestial symbols. We have a sacred location, deliberately aligned with the movements of the sun. We have a tainted discovery, a story of looting and a dramatic police raid. And we have the hard scientific proof of an ancient pan-European trade network. All these facts are clues, pointing towards a story of immense importance. The stage is set, the evidence is on the table, and now the real mystery can begin. What was this object for? We have now examined the physical evidence. We have a beautiful bronze and gold artifact, found at a sacred solar observatory, the product of a vast European trade network. We know the what, the where, and the how. But now we must confront the central question of our entire investigation, the question that elevates the Nebra sky disk from a simple treasure into a profound historical enigma. What was this object for? What was its purpose? What was the motive behind its creation? To answer this, we must become decoders. We must treat the golden symbols on the disk not just as decoration, but as a form of language, a complex code left behind by its Bronze Age creators. And as we begin to decipher this code, a series of astonishing and interconnected theories emerge, each one revealing a new layer of the disk's incredible sophistication. Our first and most famous theory begins with the most distinctive feature on the disk's face: the stars. There are 32 golden dots in total, but one small group immediately stands out. Tucked between the crescent moon and the edge of the disk is a tight, dense cluster of 7 stars. This arrangement is not random. To any stargazer, ancient or modern, this pattern is instantly recognizable. It is an almost perfect representation of the Pleiades star cluster, also known as the Seven Sisters. The Pleiades is not just any star cluster. For thousands of years, across countless cultures all over the world, it has been one of the most important and closely watched objects in the night sky. Its importance was not just mythological. It was intensely practical. The Pleiades acts as a giant, celestial calendar. Its movements are incredibly reliable and predictable. In the northern hemisphere, the first appearance of the Pleiades in the morning sky just before sunrise signals the beginning of summer. Its disappearance from the evening sky in spring signals the time to plant crops. Its highest point in the winter sky marks the middle of winter. For a prehistoric agricultural society, whose very survival depended on the success of their harvest, knowing the precise time to plant and the precise time to reap was a matter of life and death. The Pleiades was their clock, their calendar, and their guide. The theory, therefore, is that the Nebra sky disk is, at its most basic level, a star map. It is a literal, albeit stylized, depiction of a specific celestial event. The sun or full moon and the crescent moon appearing in the sky near the all-important Pleiades cluster. It is a snapshot of a sacred moment, a portable piece of the night sky. This leads directly to our second theory, which takes the star map concept and turns it into a practical tool. If the disk shows the Pleiades next to the moon, what is it trying to tell us? The key is the crescent moon. The specific phase of the moon acts as a fine-tuning mechanism for the calendar. This theory proposes that the disk is not just a map, but a farmer's almanac, a handheld guide that contains a single crucial agricultural rule. And that rule is this: when you see the thin, waxing crescent moon in the spring sky, positioned exactly as it is next to the Pleiades on this disk, it is the precise time to sow your seeds. The same rule would apply in the autumn. When the waning crescent moon in the fall matched the one on the disk next to the Pleiades, it was the definitive signal that it was time for the final harvest before winter set in. This might seem simple, but it's an incredibly sophisticated concept. Ancient farmers already knew the seasons were linked to the sun, and the months were linked to the moon. The problem is, the solar year, about 365 days, and the lunar year, about 354 days, don't match up. A purely lunar calendar quickly falls out of sync with the seasons. The Nebra sky disk appears to be a brilliant solution to this ancient problem. It's a device for synchronizing the lunar and solar calendars. The Pleiades tells you the general season, and the specific phase of the moon next to it gives you the exact date. This transforms the disk from a simple picture of the sky into a remarkably advanced astronomical rulebook, a tool that gave its owner the power to predict and control the agricultural cycle with an accuracy that would have seemed like magic to their neighbors. It was a source of immense power and prestige. But the story of the disk's function does not end there. Remember, the disk was modified over time. After its initial creation, 2 large golden arcs were added to its edges. For a long time, the purpose of these arcs was a complete mystery. But when researchers combined the disk with the astronomical data from the place it was found, the Middleburg Hill, they made a breathtaking discovery. They found that each of the arcs spans an angle of exactly 82 degrees. At first, this number seemed random, but 82 degrees is not random at all. At the specific latitude of the Middleburg Hill, the angle between the point where the sun sets on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and the point where it sets on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, is precisely 82 degrees. This is the key that unlocks the third theory. The Nebra sky disk is also a complex astronomical calculator for tracking the sun. The 2 arcs on the edges represent the entire range of the setting sun's journey across the horizon throughout the year. The ends of the arcs mark the 2 extremes, the summer and winter solstices. This means the disk was designed to be used at its specific location. The owner could have taken the disk to the top of the hill at sunset, held it flat, and aligned the left-hand arc with the horizon. As the weeks and months passed, they could watch the setting sun's position move along the edge of the disk. When the sun set at the very end of the right-hand arc, they knew it was the summer solstice. When it set at the end of the left-hand arc, it was the winter solstice. The disk was no longer just for telling the time of year for planting. It was a sophisticated tool for identifying the most important turning points of the solar year, moments that were central to the religious and ceremonial life of Bronze Age people. It was a calendar, a clock, and a solar compass all in one. This fusion of the practical and the sacred brings us to the final layer of our decoding and our fourth major theory. After the solstice arcs were added, the disk was modified one last time. A final golden arc was added to the bottom. This arc is different. It is more curved, and its surface is decorated with fine, parallel lines, like the hull of a ship. Many archaeologists and historians believe this final addition represents a sunboat or a sun barge. This is a hugely important mythological symbol found across the ancient world, from Egypt to Scandinavia. It represents the sun's nightly journey. After setting in the west, the sun was believed to be carried in a magical boat through the watery underworld, fighting off monsters and demons, before being reborn in the east at dawn. The addition of the sun boat transforms the disk once again. It is no longer just a scientific instrument for calculating calendars and solstices. It has become a religious icon, a sacred object that depicts the entire cosmic drama. It shows the world of the day, the sun, the world of the night, the moon and stars, and the mythological journey that connects them. The disk is a complete cosmological model, a map of both the physical universe and the spiritual one. It's a tool that could be used by a chieftain or priest to demonstrate their power, showing their people not only when to plant the crops, but that they also understood the secret, divine journey of the sun itself. It was an object of immense political and religious authority. So, when we put all these theories together, we see that they are not mutually exclusive. They are layers of meaning, added one on top of the other over time, creating an object of almost unbelievable complexity. It started as a star map, a guide to the seasons centered on the Pleiades. It was then refined into a farmer's almanac, a precise rulebook for agriculture. Next, it was upgraded into a solar calculator, a sophisticated tool for tracking the solstices. And finally, it was sanctified with a mythological symbol, turning it into a powerful religious icon that explained the entire cosmos. The Nebra sky disk was not one thing. It was everything. It was the science, the religion, the technology, and the mythology of an entire people, all condensed into a single, beautiful, and profoundly mysterious object. We have now seen the case for the prosecution. We have laid out the beautiful, intricate, and almost perfect theory that the Nebra sky disk is a complex astronomical calculator from the Bronze Age. The evidence seems compelling. The Pleiades cluster, the solstice arcs, the agricultural rouleau all fits together into a neat and satisfying story. This interpretation has been accepted by most mainstream archaeologists and has made the disk world famous. But in any good investigation, we cannot simply accept the first compelling story we hear. We must allow the defense to speak. We must hear the counter-arguments, the doubts, and the controversies that still swirl around this enigmatic object. It is time to put the mainstream theory itself on trial. Let's enter the courtroom of historical debate and listen to the objections raised against the case. The first, and perhaps most fundamental, objection strikes at the very heart of the disk's claim to fame. The lawyer for the skeptical defense stands up and declares, "Objection, Your Honor. The dating of this artifact is unreliable. The entire significance of the Nebra sky disk, its status as the oldest realistic map of the cosmos, rests on its age. The mainstream story dates the disk to the early Bronze Age, around 1600 BCE. But how was this date determined? It wasn't determined by carbon dating the metal, which is impossible. It was determined by typology, comparing the style of the two bronze swords that were found buried alongside the disk to other swords from known, dated Bronze Age graves. The swords are classic Bronze Age artifacts, so the assumption is that the disk, buried with them must be from the same period. But the defense lawyer argues, what if this assumption is wrong? What if the hoard is not a single collection of objects all made at the same time? It's possible that the disc was a much older or much younger object that was buried together with older swords for some ritual reason. This is where two German researchers, Regine and Peter Schauer, present their case. They argue that from a stylistic perspective, the disc doesn't look like anything else from the Bronze Age. They claim that the depiction of the sun boat at the bottom, with its distinctive shape and etched lines, is far more characteristic of art from the Hallstatt culture of the Iron Age, which flourished nearly 1,000 years later, around 600 BCE. If they are correct, the Nebraska disc is still a fascinating and important European artifact, but it is no longer the world's oldest. It would lose its primary claim to fame. The entire timeline, the very foundation of the mainstream story, becomes shaky. The prosecution's star witness, the Bronze Age date, has had its credibility questioned. The defense lawyer, seeing an opening, presses the attack with a second, even more damaging objection. Objection! The astronomical interpretation is pure speculation, a case of wishful thinking. The mainstream story is a beautiful tapestry woven from the sun, the moon, the Pleiades, and the solstices. But what if it's just a story? What if the academics, in their excitement, have projected a complex meaning onto an object that is actually much simpler? The critics argue that we are seeing what we want to see. Let's re-examine the evidence. The cluster of 7 stars, is it definitively the Pleiades? Or is it just a decorative cluster of stars? A pattern that a craftsman thought looked appealing? There is no ancient label, no text that confirms the identification. The 2 golden arcs on the Sidito, they truly represent the 82-degree angle of the solstices? Or is that a lucky coincidence? Critics point out that the arcs are not perfectly symmetrical and might have been added for purely aesthetic reasons, to frame the central image. And what of the sun boat at the bottom? The defense argues this could be almost anything. It could be a rainbow, a sickle, a diadem, or even, as some have jokingly suggested, a cosmic smile. The interpretation depends entirely on a pre-existing belief in sun boat mythology. Without that belief, it's just a curved, decorated piece of gold. The skeptics argue that the mainstream theory is a house of cards. If you pull out just one of these interpretations, if the stars aren't the Pleiades, or the arcs aren't for the solstices, the entire complex calculator theory falls apart. It could just as easily be a purely symbolic object, a chieftain's shield, the decorated top of a drum, or a ceremonial platter with no complex astronomical function at all. The prosecution's case is now looking weaker. The defense lawyer knows it's time to go after the witness, to question the very source of the information. And so, the third objection rings out. Objection! The object's origin, its provenance, is hopelessly tainted. This is a powerful and difficult argument to refute. As we know, the disc was not found by archaeologists. It was found by 2 convicted criminals, a pair of illegal looters. The entire story of where and how it was found, its exact position in the ground, and its relationship to the other objects in the hoard, all comes from the testimony of these 2 men, Henry Westphal and Mario Renner. And they only told their story after they were caught and were facing significant prison time. Can we truly trust the word of convicted criminals who had every reason to lie to get a more lenient sentence? This is the central problem. What if their story is a fabrication? What if they didn't find the hoard on the Middleburg Hill at all? It's a dark but plausible scenario. What if they found the Bronze Age swords in one location, and then found the strange disc, perhaps an object from a different time and place, somewhere else entirely? Realizing that a hoard of connected objects would be far more valuable and historically significant, they might have simply married the artifacts together, burying them on the archaeologically significant Middleburg Hill to create a more compelling and valuable story for the black market. This would explain why the disc style seems different from the swords. In this scenario, the perfect alignment of the disc's solstice arcs with the Middleburg Hill's latitude is no longer a sign of Bronze Age genius. It's a tragic, modern coincidence. Without a clean, documented, scientific excavation, a permanent shadow of doubt will always hang over the disc's context. We can never be 100% certain that the story of its discovery is true. This leads to the final, most extreme objection. It is the legal equivalent of a Hail Mary pass, an accusation so profound it threatens to blow the entire case apart. The defense lawyer takes a deep breath and proclaims, "Objection, Your Honor. We put it to the court that this entire object is a modern forgery." This is the most controversial claim of all. A small but vocal minority of critics have argued that the Nebra sky disk is not an ancient artifact at all, but a clever, modern fake, created by a skilled forger and planted for the looters to find. They point to what they see as suspicious elements: the perfectly round, machine-like holes drilled around the edge, the unusual patterns of corrosion on the bronze, and the seemingly impossible level of astronomical knowledge. This forgery theory, however, is the weakest of the objections. In response, the scientific community has brought forth an army of expert witnesses. The disc has been subjected to some of the most intense scientific scrutiny ever performed on an archaeological artifact. Multiple, independent laboratories have analyzed the trace elements in the metals, confirming that the copper comes from the specific chemical signature of Bronze Age Austrian mines, and the gold matches the signature of prehistoric Cornish River gold. Microscopic analysis of the tool marks on the surface shows they were made with primitive bronze tools, not modern steel ones. And the specific type of crystalline corrosion found deep within the metal would take thousands of years to form naturally. It cannot be faked in a laboratory. While the forgery theory makes for a dramatic headline, it has been almost universally rejected by the scientific and archaeological communities. The disc is ancient, but even with the forgery claim dismissed, the other objections remain. The doubts about the dating, the questions about the astronomical interpretation, and the dark cloud of its looted origins all hang in the air. The trial of the Nebra sky disk is not a simple case of guilty or innocent. It is a complex web of brilliant science, compelling stories, and lingering, uncomfortable questions. The beautiful, simple theory of the Bronze Age calculator has been challenged, and the jury of historical opinion is still, in some ways, out for deliberation. We have now reached the final stage of our investigation. We have examined the artifact, we have decoded its symbols, and we have heard the intense debates that challenge its very identity. The trial of the Nebra sky disk has been complex, filled with compelling evidence on one side and nagging doubts on the other. It is time now for the verdict. What can we say for certain about this enigmatic object? After all the arguments and all the analysis, what is the ultimate meaning of the Nebra sky disk? To render our final judgment, we must step back and look at what the disk tells us, not just about the stars, but about our own ancestors and the very nature of human thought. Our first finding, a verdict that stands firm even amidst all the controversy, is that the Nebra sky disk represents nothing less than a revolution in our understanding of prehistoric Europe. For centuries, the popular image of the people living in Central Europe during the Bronze Age was one of primitive barbarians. They were seen as disparate, warring tribes, living in smoky huts, possessing a crude technology, and lacking the sophisticated culture and science of the great civilizations of the time, like Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Nebra sky disk shatters this outdated and condescending view. It is a powerful witness that testifies to the existence of a culture that was vastly more complex, more knowledgeable, and more interconnected than we ever thought possible. Regardless of whether you believe the disk is from 1600 BC or 600 BC, It proves that the people of this region possessed a deep and functional understanding of the cosmos. They were not just passively looking at the stars, they were observing them, measuring their movements, and using that knowledge for practical purposes like agriculture and timekeeping. The materials of the disk alone tell a story of a sophisticated, pan-European society. The fact that gold from the tip of England and copper from the heart of the Alps could be brought together in a workshop in Germany speaks of established trade routes, complex social networks, and a shared set of values that placed immense importance on these precious materials. The craftsmanship of the disk, and the magnificent swords found with it, reveals a high level of metallurgical skill. These were not the products of a primitive culture. They were the luxury goods of a wealthy, powerful, and intellectually vibrant society. The Nebra Sky Disk forces us to redraw our own mental maps of the past and to afford the people of Bronze Age Europe the respect their achievements deserve. This leads us to our second finding, a verdict on the very purpose of the disk itself. The central debate has been, is it a scientific instrument or a religious symbol? Is it a cosmic map or a piece of mythology? The final verdict is that this is a false choice. The disk is not one or the other. Its true genius lies in the fact that it is both completely and indivisibly. For the people who created it, there was no sharp, dividing line between science and religion. Astronomy was their religion. The movements of the celestial bodies were not just a predictable, mechanical clockwork. They were the visible actions of the gods. The sun was not just a star. It was a powerful deity whose daily birth and nightly journey through the underworld were the central drama of existence. The moon was not just a satellite. It was a goddess who governed the tides, the months, and the cycles of life. The Nebra Sky Disk perfectly embodies this integrated worldview. The Pleiades cluster was a practical marker for the planting season, but it was also a sacred group of celestial sisters with their own myths and legends. The solstices were crucial astronomical turning points, but they were also the most important religious festivals of the year, celebrated with fire, feasting, and ritual. The disk is a place where these two worlds meet and become one. It is a tool that a chieftain priest could have used to tell his people when to plant their crops, and in the very same motion, demonstrate his intimate connection to the divine journey of the sun god in his celestial boat. The disk is a testament to a way of thinking that we in the modern world have largely lost, a holistic view where the sacred and the scientific are not in conflict, but are two different languages used to describe the same single, awe-inspiring reality. The verdict is that the disk is a masterpiece of both science and soul. This understanding of the disk as a fusion of ideas allows us to render our third, and perhaps most profound, finding. What is the single most important secret that the Nebra Sky Disk reveals? It is not about the Pleiades or the solstices. It is about a fundamental leap forward in the history of human thought. The disk represents one of the earliest known moments where human beings took complex, dynamic knowledge from the natural world and successfully encoded it into a portable, abstract object. Think about what this means. Observing the sky and noticing that the Pleiades appears in the spring is one level of knowledge. But creating a single, handheld object that combines the Pleiades, the phase of the moon, and the position of the sun into a single unified rule is a cognitive leap of immense proportions. It is the birth of abstraction. It is the beginning of the process that would eventually lead to writing, to mathematics, and to all of modern science. The owner of the disk no longer had to rely on memory or direct observation alone. They possessed a piece of technology, a device that held codified knowledge. The disk is, in essence, a prehistoric computer program. The input is your observation of the sky. The output is a clear instruction, plant now or harvest now. The solstice arcs are an even more powerful example. The 82-degree angle of the arc is an abstract piece of data that represents the entire annual journey of the sun. It is a physical embodiment of a complex astronomical concept. This ability to distill the vast, chaotic information of the natural world into a simple, elegant, and useful model is the very essence of what it means to be a scientific thinker. The Nebra sky disk is a portrait of the human mind at the very moment it learned this incredible new trick. Finally, we must deliver a verdict on the controversies themselves. After all the debate, what remains? Our final finding is that the mystery of the Nebra sky disk is an essential and permanent part of its legacy. Even if we accept the mainstream theory as the most likely one, a healthy dose of uncertainty will always remain because of its looted origins. We can never know for sure what we lost when it was ripped from the earth. And this is, in a way, a beautiful thing. The disk is not a closed case. It is not a dead object in a museum whose story is completely understood. It is a living artifact that continues to inspire debate, research, and wonder. It forces us to question our assumptions and to acknowledge the limits of our own knowledge. Was it used by a powerful chieftain to consolidate his power? Was it the ritual tool of a shaman who communed with the sky gods? Was its knowledge a closely guarded secret of an elite priestly class? Or was it a common tool shared among a community? These are questions we may never be able to answer definitively. And that is okay. The Nebra sky disk's ultimate power lies in its ability to provoke these questions. It is an object that speaks of a world that is distant and strange, yet populated by minds that were just as curious, as intelligent, and as creative as our own. The final verdict is that the disk's greatest treasure is not the gold on its surface, but the enduring enigma it represents, an enigma that will continue to captivate our imaginations for generations to come. It is a perfect mystery, sent to us from a forgotten world. So, what is the final verdict on the Nebra sky disk? The evidence overwhelmingly points to it being an authentic Bronze Age artifact of immense importance. It is a cosmic map, a farmer's rulebook, and a religious icon all fused into one. But its true significance is even greater. It is a portrait of the human mind at a crucial moment of awakening, the moment we stopped just looking at the stars and started to understand their dance, to encode their secrets, and to use that knowledge to shape our world. It is a message, not from aliens or a lost civilization, but from our own brilliant ancestors, a message that says, "We were here, we were watching the sky, and we understood." Thanks for exploring history's mysteries with Ancient Relics Keeper. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What secret should we unravel next? Stay curious and see you soon.